any questions that are directed more to do with applicants. And over to you, Ricky.
Thanks, Nicolina. Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to have you here for the subject webinar. As Nicolina said, I'm going to give a quick talk through our subject, beginning with a few introductions, and then we've got some time for discussion, questions and answers about study and the programme here at the University of Plymouth. So first off, Nicolina made these introductions just a moment ago, but just to reiterate, my name is Dr. Ricky Burke. I'm the programme leader for the undergraduate programme in architecture, or the BA Honours Programme in Architecture. Nicolina, who just spoke, Dr. Nicolina Bobic, is our marketing and admissions leader and does a wonderful job of coordinating all of the applicants and inquirers. And Lucas Voss has been a part of the furniture at the university for a long time. Lucas has just finished his postgraduate study, and I think we might lose Lucas after really 6 years, 5 years, but 6 really, which would be a real pity. But Lucas has been great, turning up and putting in a huge amount of effort with these kinds of events as well as the studies over the years. So I'm going to give a 20 to 25 minute talk about the programme here. Hopefully it will answer a lot of questions, but also give you guys a taste for the kind of work that we do and the structure of the programme that we have at the university. I want to just give you some context for where we are in the year. We've just finished our assessment, which means all of the coursework is in. Then we had an external examination and an end of year show. So we had a real celebration of the work that our under and postgraduate students have done. And that's in fact what these images are behind me. The virtual background is some shots from a big show that we had highlighting and showcasing the students' work last Friday. And it was attended by a lot of people, lots of people from the industry and from the university, as well as people's friends and family. It was a really good thing. So we're in the process now moving into the cycle that begins the next academic year in architecture. With that in mind, I just want to give you a bit of context about Plymouth and particularly about our programme, our undergraduate programme. So aside from being a very good place to live and study, the School of Architecture here is very well established. We have been running a School of Architecture for over 55 years here at the University of Plymouth. And we've developed a culture of education really built around our students' interests. This means that we always approach the briefs and coursework that we set from the perspective of what are you bringing as a student to the programme and how can we work with that as a way of exploring the architectural challenge before us in the brief. And this is really about prioritising confidence building and collaborative working within our students. One of the things that we really try to do in the studio is build a culture of peer learning where people are working alongside one another, seeing what each other is doing and having conversations about the work. And we find that this is really productive for building a community, but also for enhancing your work in ways beyond just the contact time that you have with tutors and lecturers. We believe that knowledge and expertise are co-created in a collaborative manner, and this is why we really try to foster that kind of studio environment. And it means that we don't really view the architect as the kind of sole author of the built environment. Instead, we try to view this as something of collaborating within teams and building that confidence to work with other people. I'm going to talk a little bit about the facilities that we have and the ethos that we have behind the programme as we've constructed here in Plymouth. And the slides along the way will either be of student work from the past year or so, or some of the facilities that we have around campus. So when talking about the ethos of what we do here at the University of Plymouth, I really want to pick up on these 3 bullet points that are shown on the screen, and then I want to talk about how this is reflected in some of the facilities that we have. While building the way that we work around students' interests, we also have an agenda for climate responsive design, issues of inclusivity and diversity around building and designing, and also the role of different media in the way that we develop our work. This is really important because we consider these to be the contemporary challenges of our time, that we are trying to engage with projects that are heavily embedded in climate responsive attitudes, that notions of identity and access, rights to design and construction are critical in our age, and it's no longer not even no longer, but attitudes of the master builder and the more enclosed or exclusive rights to access for architecture and construction aren't really an approach that we identify with. We try to be very inclusive through our work. And when we talk about the role of advancing media, we're very aware that the world around us is shifting technologically. And that these technological shifts, on the one hand, enable us to work differently, but they also influence the way that we work. And this influence, this reciprocal influence around the way that we employ media to help us deliver and explore designs, and also the influence that they have on the work that we do, is something that we really try to bring to the foreground through our curriculum. The short video that played while I was speaking was one of our new facilities, and it's only opened this semester. And it has, it's the new Babbage building. It has within it new woodworking and metalworking facilities, digital fabrication laboratories. And this is part of a large suite of the different media and skill sets that we encourage our students to engage with. Alongside that, we have spaces, as you can see along the bottom ribbon of this slide here, for immersive media, gaming, other fabrication spaces within this building, as well as a media hub equipped with photographic equipment, sound equipment, and performance spaces. And this is because we really encourage our students to broaden their architectural design toolkit to something which sees architecture through these different creative approaches. And we encourage our students to engage with all of these artistic and creative facilities that we have throughout the campus. I think it's worth spending a moment talking about some of the institutional recognition that we have. At the top there of the slide, it says that we were awarded the Teaching Excellence Framework Gold Award, which means that we have the highest standard for teaching excellence that a university can achieve, and we're really pleased to have been awarded that this year. Some of the other things that really stand out there, I'm going to just jump a little further down that list. 4th best university for quality of student life within the Ultimate Alternative University League table. Plymouth is a really great place to be. It's also a low-cost place to be. We average far lower rentals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that very shortly when we talk about the campus. Highly ranking in terms of research and student satisfaction, as well as being recognised highly for our LGBT plus and inclusion and our sustainability accolades. You'll notice they're first-class category of sustainable universities in the UK. These are things that we really work hard to not only achieve, but ensure that the programme of study that we deliver reflects. We try to be as sustainable and inclusive as we can, and we really prioritise student satisfaction and the quality of research and teaching. I just want to introduce some of the wider team, if I can, and speak a little bit to that research and teaching agenda. You'll see there on the slide where it says expertise, a sort of mosaic of people involved. And the team is really quite broad. It comprises a number of academics, and academics are the main people that structure and run modules within the programme. They're also most often involved in research activities, which is what we do alongside teaching and administration within the university. Alongside those academic team members are a number of what we would refer to as our associate staff, and these are typically people working out in practice. So they're architects and other disciplinarians linked to the work that we do who come in, and this really gives us a critical live edge. These are people that are working on real architectural projects that come into the university to teach with us on routine basis. Some will give specialist talks, others will be involved in tutorials, and it contextualizes the work that we do academically within a real world situation and challenges us and our briefs to operate against some of the professional constraints of real architects, qualified architects. Beyond that, we also engage with people from our technical services team. So all of those spaces I showed you a moment ago and all those resources, they have specialist technicians that work in those areas, and they get involved in the delivery and teaching, as well as support for projects that students are working with. And we have people working in sort of gaming offshoots and construction offshoots from the core architectural strand. And these guys really get involved and help us work with that. Really, what I'd like you to think about there is that architecture here at the University of Plymouth is a very interdisciplinary team. We work with people from different backgrounds, acknowledging that the core practice of architecture is inherently interdisciplinary and requires this collaboration that I mentioned earlier to engage with people outside of not only ourselves, but our immediate architectural circles. Some examples of the kind of research expertise that we have within the team, it's quite broad. Part of that interdisciplinary nature of architecture as a practice reflects the breadth of the research that we do. And we have expertise, people working in areas of urban design, healthcare, digital fabrication and advancing methods of construction, displacement and conflict, as well as other areas of expertise. And this means that the university has architecture represented through conferences and symposia and showcases of the work, which really, again, gives us this cutting edge, in many cases, world-leading research angle to the teaching that we do. And this informs the approach that we take through writing briefs and teaching in classes. Aligned with that is our outward-facing nature. Some of the images on the screen there reflect some of those events. The image on the left-hand side is one of our end-of-year shows where we showcase the students' work, as I mentioned earlier, invite lots of people from practices and other professionals, as well as other disciplines, to come and see the work that the students have done. And this creates a really nice opportunity for networking, alongside some of the other things that you can see here. BA1, which I'll talk about in just a moment. We've done lots of collaborative work with local partners, including the local authority, schools, where we go and get really hands-on and work collaboratively with other people from the city, and really gives us a live edge to our projects. On the right-hand side of the screen there is a project that we did a few years ago, where an actual construction of proposed design was put in place. And this was part of an ongoing relationship with some external partners, where the students were involved in the design and construction of the project to give a real-world experience to the design and construction with a client. Now, these things vary year on year, depending on the context of the projects that we do. But really the point here is that we try always to keep a live edge to some of the work that we're doing through our projects, which really gives you or any of our students an understanding of how architecture operates in a professional context and in a social context. So just a little bit about the various stages that we have in the undergraduate program. BA1 really is about developing the fundamental architectural skills through a series of interconnected modules. It's usually built around delivering a smaller scale project where communications, technology, design, and theory all come together around that project for students to build the foundational sets of representation and thinking, skill sets of representation and thinking that we would expect before then progressing on to larger challenges. Through this, we often engage in very creative modes, and you can see some images of a studio environment at the top there, as well as what we might think of as a client or user consultation, where lots of school children have come to co-create some knowledge. And it culminates in many different products and media as outputs, which really is how we build that foundational skill set that we're going to take further into the second and third year. When we move to BA Stage 2, we really try to keep that diversity of media and experimentation alive, but the scale of the challenge really increases. We move from something which might be quite micro and localized to working at the scale of the neighborhood in a more urban context. Here, we're looking at a social housing project, which is run in semester 1. And really, the point of this project is about how housing is a system for living and construction, and how these things really speak to the social processes and contexts in which they're located. So housing is about creating local identity. It's about understanding networks of production and material cycles in its context. But it's also about seeking quality living environments that support people, their communities, and the ecologies of the area. The emphasis on craft and material shown in some of that earlier work persists throughout semester 2. And in semester 2 in BA2, we really start to think about technological systems, moving into more climate responsive landscapes and the more contemporary issues of climate responsive design for architecture of our age. This is also where we make that shift from the foundational skill sets to some of the more advancing media skill sets. And we've had some brilliant work come out this year, including students engaging with gaming and soundscapes. Lucas actually helped with some of those projects, which was wonderful. And data and how we represent consultation processes and the design process in architecture through more advancing toolkits rather than the foundational drawing and modeling, which is still employed, but we start to develop these new skills. By the time we get to BA3, we're really increasing the scale of that challenge again. We've built a foundational skill set, and year 2 has been very experimental. Now we're looking to apply that skill set at a larger scale, and it begins with a master planning project, thinking about how architecture operates at the scale of larger districts or even full areas of cities. This is really about reinforcing the architectural conversation through stronger contextual grounding and understanding how architecture operates at that scale. And the project of master planning is about honing in and informing a building proposition which comes after that. And here on the screen are some examples of some building proposals or elements of building proposals that have come from those earlier master plans. The intention by the time we get to that later part of the degree, semester 2, BA3, is that students are really pursuing an agenda that they constructed through their dissertation thinking. So the dissertation runs in semester 1, year 3, and is where students will explore an idea, a concept through their writing and through their practice that is really relevant to them in their approach to architecture. And then in this semester 2 design project, the work from the master plan and that dissertation thinking really direct the student into a design that is representative of their own brief making. They've designed a building which really is appropriate for that context based on their knowledge of the subject and their knowledge through the master plan. One of the things about the third year is that due to that progressing skill set, we really encourage our students to have a conscientious approach to design and also to often challenge conventions of architecture and construction, to think of what we do as being about progressing the discipline of architecture, not merely repeating things that are seen elsewhere. And so we really encourage innovative thinking and creative approaches to design and construction. I'll move fairly quickly through this, but I think it's important for us to think about some of the graduate destinations. I mentioned earlier that we often collaborate with external partners, and some of those external partners are very revered and recognized architectural practices shown on the screen here at the moment. And many of our graduates have ended up at these top firms around the UK. We also engage in the RIBA mentoring scheme. It's important for us to mention that we are an RIBA and presently ARB accredited program. And this allows us to access things like the RIBA mentoring scheme, where local practitioners come in and work with students to prepare them for moving beyond BA3 and finding work after studies, after graduation. I want to speak a little bit to the interest and success of some of our graduating students. The two faces on the screen there, Kyle and Jacob, were awarded the commendation for the silver medal at the RIBA President's Medals. The RIBA President's Medals is an international competition for students in architecture, and the silver medal is awarded to postgraduate students. Kyle and Jacob both came through our undergraduate program. They studied the BA in architecture at the University of Plymouth and returned to do their postgraduate studies. And they were the runner-up. They received the commendation for the silver medal, which is really the highest award for architecture that an architecture student can get. So for these guys to achieve that with a project built around cultural identity and sustainable approaches to construction and climate, in this case on Tutti Island, was a real it's a real boost to their confidence and really speaks to the hard work that they put in, as well as the culture and identity of the work that we do here at the University of Plymouth. Another student, Sam Brankin, graduated just over a year ago. And Sam is now working at FCB Studios in London, an extremely well-respected architects practice that are pioneering particularly adaptive reuse of existing buildings and some of the household climate responsive design tools, things that are ubiquitous around the industry, were designed and developed and continue to be by FCB Studios. And Sam's getting on extremely well there. Sam also took some time out while at FCB Studios to do the Corkin build. And in this case, Sam went on to build a school in Vanuatu with a team over there. And having caught up with Sam a few times recently, it's really clear that this has been one of the most inspirational experiences of his education and his career, to progress from BA3 with a strong portfolio and work for one of the leading practices and have the chance to go somewhere that otherwise would seem a million miles away, to do something as engaging as working with the community to build a sustainable and earthquake and tornado proof school in Vanuatu. So Sam really enjoyed that opportunity off the back of the undergraduate study done. Just some more on some of our more recent alumni. Bethany Long set up the Women in Architecture group and is spearheading women's voices in architecture and construction in the Midlands at the moment. Beth graduated here and got into that role quite rapidly a couple of years ago. And we're really pleased to have an ongoing relationship with Beth. She's getting involved in some of our further marketing and outreach very soon. Two of those people in the middle of the slide there won not the highest student award in architecture, but the highest award in architecture that the UK has to offer, which is the Sterling Prize. Stephen Witherford of Witherford, Watson and Mann studied here and has won the Sterling Prize for architecture and received the People's Vote and been a shortlisted nominee. So 3 entries for the top prize in architecture. And the interesting thing about all of those projects that Stephen Witherford has, Witherford, Watson and Mann have been either received or been nominated for that award for, are that they're all adaptive reuse and really have a sustainable agenda at their heart. And that's echoed also in DRMM architects. And Alex de Rijk studied his undergraduate here, who was awarded the Sterling Prize for Architecture in 2017 for Hastings Pier. And it's really striking that for our school to have had 2 wins and 4 nominations in such a short amount of time from our alumni. And it really speaks to the quality of the history of architectural education that we have here at the university. On the right-hand side of this slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the outreach and upkeep that we do. A colleague of mine and myself went to London this time last year, and we hope to repeat the exercise. We met up with Fatkin. Fatkin is a studio in the west of London, set up by 2 of our alumni, Dan and Fiona, who both studied their under and postgraduates here at the University of Plymouth. And their practice is really doing well. They're employing more than 10 people, and over 50% of their staff are former University of Plymouth graduates. It was really good to go and see how those guys are getting on and what they're valuing in our graduating students, which means that they're continuing to work with people from the University of Plymouth. And that really was the thrust behind the image just above there, where we got together with our alumni, invited everybody to come and meet us on the South Bank, anyone that was available in the area. The South Bank in London, to discuss really how they're getting on, to have a catch up and see what their employers have valued, what it is that they're going on to do next. And this helps us to contextualize the ongoing work that we do and the shape that we have of the program. What is it that we're doing that people value? What are people doing to take what they did here at the University of Plymouth further? So we really value this ongoing discussion with our alumni. And it's not a case of they just leave and we don't ever return or look back. Okay, just a little bit about the student experience. Now, normally when I give this talk, we're on one of the higher floors in the Roland Lewinsky building, which you'll see on the last slide of this presentation. And I can point out the window to some of these things, but Plymouth is, oh yeah, Bethany's just turned the camera on there, actually. If you look behind Bethany, that's the top 4 floors of that building are our architecture department. And they look out over this landscape here. And Plymouth is really quite special to study architecture. It's the most surviving post-Second World War regeneration plan of that socialist era of town centre reconstruction in the UK. And that's known as the Abercrombie plan, shown in that drawing in the centre of the page there. And it's a fascinating, preserved modernist plan that we can study and we can refer to against the context of a more historic part of Plymouth, known as the Barbican, which is very old and has a very different network and city layout, and the university campus, which is a much more contemporary layout and set of architectural examples. And so there's some real live, very close, rich themes and architectural styles that we can draw upon when speaking about architecture and studying here. On top of that, Plymouth is not unique as a campus, but certainly is attractive and rare in that it's very centralized. Our university campus, I'll come on to show you a plan of this in just a moment. Our university campus is really centralized in the middle of the town, and everything is within walking distance. Most things are within walking distance. On the left side of your screen there, you can see the Lido, the outdoor swimming pool, the Hoe, the Barbican, Dartmoor, the Students' Union, Coast. Plymouth's really great because it's surrounded by lots of geographic features that give us a lot to do. It's a really good place to be if you like outdoors things, but also has a decent amount of nightlife and other opportunities for recreation as well. Just returning to this notion of the location here, the little circle on that plan is the university campus, and it's right on the doorstep of the bigger circle, which is the city centre, the Barbican and the Hoe. Really wonderful places to go and spend time, and everything's walkable, meaning you don't need to be taking trains and buses, and it's a very safe city to spend your time. The other shot on the right-hand side of the screen here shows the Roland Lewinsky building. I'm just going to get our pointer. Shows the Roland Lewinsky building and where many of our student accommodation halls buildings are, which are very close around the campus. And again, this is not unique, but certainly attractive about the University of Plymouth, that our campus is really central, not only to the city, but also to a lot of the student accommodation. In fact, almost all of the student accommodation is within a 5 to 10 minute walk of the university. And again, this means we've got a real hub here on and around the campus where our students really have this space that feels like it's theirs. The campus is a really lively and buzzing space to be. Just sticking with the student experience for a moment, we appreciate that university can be a testing time. And one of the things that we do to mitigate some of that testing or pressure is that we have a 100% coursework program. We have no exams on our program. We believe that the way that architects practice and the best way to showcase skills is through developing work, not just being able to address answers on a given moment. And this 100% coursework means that you're in dialogue with tutors throughout the progression of the work, and means that you kind of know what you're going to submit before having the pressure of an exam to perform on the day. We also have excellent student services, lots of recreational activities to be involved in and clubs. We also, alongside that, have a student support network, and that support network is comprised of pastoral tutors, people that you can go to have an initial conversation about any difficulties that you might be having at the university, but then also a broader network of mental health and support services through our library and students' union. And these mean that when you're away at university, yes, there are people you can talk to about your work, your tutors, but you also can speak to these other networks of people who can help you with any other difficulties you might be experiencing. In addition to that, we provide our students not only with all those brilliant facilities that I showed you earlier, but with all of the standard industry software. It's all available on campus. and accessible to our students. And this means that you shouldn't have any challenges with access to the ways of working. You have all those facilities and all of these software ready at your disposal. A few more points I'd like to just touch upon. We like to hold study trips. That helps us to build analogous contexts for the work that we're doing in our projects by looking at somewhere else and comparing. But also is a really good way of building the student community and the student staff community, us getting to know you and you getting to know one another. They typically follow a pattern of something regional in BA1, national in BA2, and international by the time you're in BA3. The three on the screen that you can see there are from St. Ives, very local in Cornwall, Hackney, where we went to study social housing and housing transformation in London, looking at London really through a new lens there. And we really enjoyed that trip this year, actually. It was a really nice one. And then Prague, the third one. We went to Prague with our third-year students. None of these trips is necessarily what we do year on year. You can see underneath destinations so far: Amsterdam, Barcelona, Berlin, Bilbao, and so on. What we like to do is ensure that if there's something relevant happening or there's a project that we're doing and there's an analogous context somewhere, that we can go and see somewhere to think about that project through a different lens. We really enjoy those field trips. So just a couple more things then. Alongside the academic nature of the program that we run, we have the second biggest society on campus, which is the Plymouth Architecture Society, or Parks, and it's entirely student-led, and they run a lecture series, they host social events, things like life drawing and other classes, or going bowling and just having an evening out, or going to visit another campus somewhere. And this is really nice. They recently had a project where they set up a day working with a local fashion company, and some t-shirts were designed. And this is a strength of the work that we've had from our students here at the University of Plymouth for a long time. We want to keep that tradition going, have a high quality society that's really supportive and helps to build a kind of welcoming program for you guys. Just a little bit about the structure then before we wrap up. The BA Honours Architecture programme is 3 years full-time of study and is accredited with the two professional bodies, the RIBA and the Architects Registration Board. The timetable at the bottom of the screen there is just an example of a typical BA1 study week. The times and days might shift a little bit as we go through the planning of next year, but this is what a typical week looks like for BA1. Those bits that say self-directed, that's where the things that have occurred, excuse me, the things that have been disseminated to you through the contact teaching time, we'd be expecting you guys to explore those things and develop projects ahead of the next session. The Parks events, they don't happen every week, but typically they're on a Tuesday or a Friday evening. And Students' Union activities, this is something that students are encouraged to become involved in, and they typically have events on Wednesday afternoons. So that's what a typical shape of a week looks like in BA1. By the time you get to BA2 and BA3, some of that self-directed learning starts to expand because you need more time to develop your projects. It's important for us to say, just looking at that image of the studio there, that our studios are open from 8:30 till 10 throughout the week and from 8:30 till 6 on the weekends. This means it has really good accessibility without the need for you guys to feel that you have to live in there, which it means you do go home and get some sleep. But there are places on campus like the library which are open all day throughout the year. And I just now want to talk a little bit about the opportunity, the shape of an architectural education. The BA Honours is highlighted in red on the screen here at the moment. That's the 3 years undergraduate study. And you might be familiar with a traditional route through architecture, as I've just highlighted there in that ring. Of course, you can do your part 1, then a postgraduate study for part 2, and then your professional registration, the RIBA part 3, to become a registered architect. And many do this. But many also go on to do other things, such as leave the undergraduate program and go on to work as climate consultants or other built environment specialists. We've had people, as I mentioned earlier, become fashion designers or digital media producers, community activists, and so on. So it isn't compulsory that you follow the traditional route right through the 7 years. You might also, as many of our students have done, go on to do a master's, say, in architecture or in architectural design or any of the other masters that we offer at the university. And by doing those masters, you again can go into other disciplines, you can go into other areas rather than having to necessarily just go through the traditional route to become an architect. Finally, I just wanted to speak to the another route, which is that many of our students and most of our academic team will have done this, will have gone on to do a PhD or research degree after their postgraduate studies. Now, none of these things is obligatory for you, but it's worth just noting that an undergraduate degree in architecture really opens up a huge number of doors for where you can go in terms of career and further study. And it's a degree that has so many skills embedded in its skill set that really the breadth of career choice afterwards is really wide and really rich. Okay, just before we wrap up, it's worth also noting that we don't operate in isolation here in Plymouth. We have a global significance and we have student exchange opportunities. We have the Erasmus Turing scheme, which allows for students to go on exchange to places such as Austria, Germany, Italy, US, Poland. We actually have some students still on their semester 2 in the US and in Austria at the moment, which is really great. And we have lots of students come to us, particularly from Germany and Austria. We seem to get a lot from those locations, but also from the Netherlands as well. In addition to that, our program of architecture at the University of Plymouth has collaborations with a partner institution at Hong Kong University, Hong Kong University Space, where they teach the same program as us, and we engage in an ongoing dialogue with some teaching exchanges there, which is really healthy for us to have that external influence. And also a bilateral accreditation agreement with Malaysia, which means that the accreditation of the program is recognized across both countries. And the incoming partner institution, much like we have in Hong Kong, being set up in Sri Lanka later this year. Finally, I just want to mention a note here about the Gavin Pomeroy Travelling Scholarship, which is open to second-year students. This year is the first year of a guaranteed 50 years where a former student and member of staff at the University of Plymouth in architecture bequeathed in their will a £1,000 grant to support a second-year student with a travelling proposal between their second and third year to go and study somewhere else. And this really is a way of supporting that student's interest and their future dissertation and studies. And we're really pleased to be able to offer that opportunity. And that was awarded to one of our students just last week on Friday at our end of year show. Okay, so just a little bit on what you would need to do if you were to apply to us. If you go to ucas.com and search for Architecture Plymouth, you can use the institution code P60 and the UCAS code K100 for architecture, and you can find the way that you apply to the program. The entry requirements for 24-25, we can't give the exact numbers yet for 25-26, but for 24-25 are between 104 and 136 UCAS points or their equivalent, and a portfolio showing a range of creative work. Now, a portfolio we can speak a little to, but a portfolio really is a chance for you to showcase your creative potential. Really, we're talking 12 to 20 pages of written or graphic techniques and skills showcasing your communications work. This can be things like drawings, models, sketches, research, graphic design, anything that you've done that showcases your creativity. Remember that we really acknowledge that architecture is quite broad, and we're looking for something that shows a diverse range of thinking and ability that we will then be able to understand your readiness to join the architecture program. Just in a moment, when we go into the questions, I'll leave up a website, which is our architecture website, that shows where you can go to get some portfolio advice if you're unsure about that. We also are going to offer some remote portfolio advice conversations, and we'll notify you of those in just a second when you can come and join us if you would like to have one. Okay, so finally, thank you for joining us for this webinar. Hopefully it's been informative. What we'd like to do is take some time for questions from you. And this is where Lucas and Nicolina and perhaps some others might come in to help answer some of those questions. But really, we want to just answer any questions or give some more context to the study here at the university to ensure that you're fully prepared to make your decisions. So I'm going to stop sharing and load up that portfolio advice screen, and perhaps we'll draw on some of those questions coming through the chat. Okay, while we wait for some of those questions to come in through the chat, this is the University of Plymouth BA Honours in Architecture webpage. The easiest way to find it, you can either type in this web address, of course, or if you just Google Plymouth Architecture or University of Plymouth Architecture, you'll very easily find this web page. And if you scroll down a little, I'm going to go a little further down. Portfolio requirements for applicants. If you click on this link, it will take you to this page where there are some examples of different portfolios that you can take a look at for the sorts of things that we typically would see in a portfolio, as well as one of our colleagues here, former program leader Andy Humphreys, discussing portfolios with, oh look, an older version of Lucas on the website there. So please do check out the how to put together a portfolio section on the web page if you're unsure. I'm going to just turn attention to the chat for a moment, see what questions we have.
I can't see anything through on the chat, Ricky, but I didn't know not to put the spotlight on Lucas, but seeing as he's on the call, I don't know whether a quick kind of synopsis from him might be quite interesting to get a student's perspective, just if that's helpful.
Are you happy to come in, Lucas?
Yeah, sure. I guess really for me, what I really enjoyed about Plymouth is the real great studio atmosphere and way of working. Obviously, we have all the studio spaces, which are a very collaborative space, but a lot of hard work happens in there, but it also makes it a very fun atmosphere to be working alongside each other in our studios that we have. And we're very lucky that we've got a lot of space across the Roland Levinsky building where we can store materials in our lockers and just really make it feel like our own space. But also in where we're situated in Plymouth, it really offers that at the end of the day, when the weather's nice, you've had a hard day in studio, you can just take a 10-15 minute walk down to the Hoe and chill out, go to the seafront. So it's a really beautiful location also to be based in. And I've really enjoyed my time, so much so in the BA course here that I stuck on a little while longer and have just done my 2 years of masters here. When I was thinking about applying for university originally, obviously I went through this process of applying through UCAS and then putting a portfolio together. And when I was applying for uni, I was really particularly interested in photography. And so I really demonstrated a lot of the skills I'd learned through photography, but also understanding the processes in creative thinking and ways of working and how I could apply that to architecture. And I think it's really important to be sort of true to yourself when you're going through that process of putting a portfolio together to really demonstrate what your interests are. Don't really sort of think about, oh, I'm going to try do something for the sake of what I think someone's looking for, but just be true to yourself and really show what you're interested in, your passions and ways of working and thinking. And it's not just about your end result of a project that you might have done in school, but also the process, the way you got to that result is really very important to show. So that's sort of how I went about doing my portfolio.
That's really nice advice, Lucas. I think this notion that we're not looking for necessarily polished, but we're looking for thinking and process as well as other things that we might see in a portfolio, I think is really important. We're really looking for people that demonstrate the ability to think creatively and critically. Yeah, thank you for adding that. Okay, I've had a couple of questions come through directed straight to me. Oh, hold on, one here from Jack. if I were to do a master's degree in architecture, would it increase the amount of pathways I can take? The answer there is possibly and probably, Jack. Master's degrees can be very focused. So at postgraduate level, you're really driving an agenda that you're interested in, as well as fulfilling criteria toward a professional degree. And this means that it can, assuming you're talking about a master's degree in architecture, it can be quite pointed at something, or it can be something more exploratory. And if it's something more exploratory, then it could be something which opens up more of those pathways. And I think this is an important thing for us to consider, that you don't have to do your master's in architecture. You might go on to do a master's in something else. So if I think of some of the examples of some of our past students, some have gone on to do masters in planning, high performance building design. So there are other offshoots that become quite specific at master's level, while other students might go through a master's more related to the general progression in architecture, which can again open up the opportunities for becoming a professional architect, or again working in another related field. So I think that the answer really is that once you've completed that undergraduate study, you then will have lots of opportunity to study on different master's programs. And so that breadth of field, it's quite wide. And from there, you can either become more pointed and targeted, and that might enable you to get into a more specialist space, or you can study, again, architecture as a core subject, and this keeps things quite broad and quite wide open. I hope that gives some clarity. I think the first thing is to get the undergrad done before the postgrad. And what we tend to find is that students come into architecture with a general enthusiasm for the subject, and that enthusiasm persists, but often becomes quite concentrated and pointed around a certain interest in architecture as they progress toward the end of the undergraduate, particularly into their postgraduate studies. Okay, a question here around how we support students in finding placements and how quickly placements are secured after completing the BA. So the ways that we help students to secure placements, really, it's a number of things. We do lots of external engagement, which involves bringing other practices in to the university, which is a really good thing for students to get involved in. They can begin conversations with employers and begin building those relationships. But there are also lots of things like our shows, where they come and directly look at students' work. And I know that from the show on Friday last week, even our second year students were being approached. And for instance, one has been asked to carry out some commissions for some model making for some projects for an architect in Cornwall, for instance. And a lot of our third year students, quite a number, were approached and invited to interview, which is really wonderful. In addition to that, we have two mentoring programs. We have a careers mentoring program, which is more broad. And one of our third years this year particularly made good use of that, is going to work in the delivery of some inclusive housing, not directly in an architectural practice, but inclusive housing work in Plymouth after their degree. And they found our careers mentoring service really helpful to develop that. While the other is the RIBA mentoring program, which is where throughout the third year, we work with practices both local to Plymouth and further afield, where a mentor from that practice will spend some time with our students, developing their understanding of industry, their expectations for industry. And this really helps our students to build, again, relationships, but also successful portfolios and interview preparations and so on. We have a very high number of our students, according to our last year's data, finding employment very quickly after graduating. We're very successful in that arena. Just picking up on Jack's secondary part of the question there, would we recommend taking a gap year to develop a stronger portfolio, etc.? Jack, if it's okay, can you just let me know, do you mean a gap year between where you are now and starting the undergraduate, or between the BA undergraduate and the masters that might come later? I'll just give you a moment to write now or later. Oh, so it's between sixth form and the undergraduate. Okay, great. Thanks, Jack. That's a personal choice, I would say. And perhaps actually, as you were typing that, I thought maybe I should just answer both of those things anyway. So I'd say it's a personal choice, but there is you'll probably find that you'll have a confident and there'll be a lot of work that you can draw upon to build a good portfolio in the work that you've done already. My advice would be, if you're not sure, don't necessarily take a year to build a portfolio, but come and have a portfolio conversation with us and we can send you some details on how to do that. You can do it remotely like this and we can look at the portfolio expectations. Nicolina might want to speak to this in just a moment. Just before we do, the reason I was trying to clarify there is that it is recommended often to take a year out between the undergraduate and postgraduate because it helps you to contextualize the work you've done in the undergraduate in some industry experience. That's not compulsory, but we tend to find that people that have gone from their undergraduate to work in industry and then return for their masters have a, not always, but usually have a stronger confidence having taken those skills, put them to practice, and then returned. So Nicolina, do you want to speak a little bit to the portfolio requirements? Because I think we should not put anybody off the applying now if they'd like to, because they fear their portfolio might not be strong, but maybe how we can facilitate those portfolio discussions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Sure, of course, it'll be a pleasure. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Jack, for the question. A lot of the inquirers and applicants for architecture do produce a fair
Lena, you might have frozen there for a moment. Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. My screen froze, so it's possible it froze for others. Would you mind? I think we got too many applicants and inquiries, and then it froze.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. When it comes to our kind of applicants and inquirers, we find that a lot of them would have done a fair bit of work during their GCSE and for A levels that they can then place and insert into their portfolio. So whether it may be that you are doing product design or fine art, or even some really interesting research studies in geography, whether it may be physical geography or human geography. So don't discard all of this wonderful work that you would have produced either for your GCSE or A levels or both. It's more about kind of thinking, what is the work that you've done that best showcases a diverse range of skills, but also that best also showcases your interests and what makes you tick, or what makes you curious about the world in which we live in. So perhaps just looking, kind of having an understanding of the subjects that you may have done or that you're doing now, and just looking at the work that you've already done would be kind of the first step, and then thinking what can be brought into the portfolio. Having said this, I think, and I'm picking up on something that Ricky said earlier, we are offering an online portfolio advice session on the 19th of June from 3:30 p.m. So if you are interested in engaging one of these, feel free to note so in the chat and I will get in touch with you. At this stage, there is no need to produce anything. This conversation is just an opportunity to tease out some of the ideas that you may have for your portfolio. And bear in mind that the work that you include in your portfolio doesn't need to be solely the work that you would have produced at school. It can be some of the work page from the website. If you click on a couple of the example portfolios, and if you watch the video, you'll see that our applicants even include some of the music that they've composed, because there's something about music and rhythm and architecture that has been readily deployed by architects. The portfolio doesn't need to include any study of architecture at all, but it does need to demonstrate some skill set in drawing and making. I don't know, hopefully that answers your question, Jack. Also, it doesn't need to kind of get to the stage where you consider it as perfect. You might kind of think that it's still rough, but if you kind of send it, email it to me, we can have a conversation, and the portfolio may be complete, even though you may not have completed all of the projects to the standard that you wish to have completed them for.
Yeah, thanks, Nicoline. Yeah, I think that sometimes not having, if anyone's not done a portfolio before, maybe it seems like a strange thing. So that's why we try to make sure we cover a lot of advice on that. So, 12 to 20 pages of that kind of creative work that shows that you're a thinker and a doer. That's what we're looking for. So if you can compile that together, yeah, great. We'd be happy to have those advice sessions. Nicolina, I think it's probably worth also saying, I think I'm right here, that you can approach us after the session today to also enroll on that portfolio advice session. So if you aren't sure and then later you think, oh, I need one, please email either Nicolina or myself. Don't feel like you've missed the boat on that. We can still accommodate you, I'm sure, on the 19th of June.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch with you after today's session, just to thank you for for attending the session, but also to send you some further information, and that way you will have my contact details, and then there is also an opportunity to express interest should you wish to engage in a portfolio advice session.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, James. James just left a note in the chat. It was lovely to have you attending the session, and hopefully if there are any questions after today, feel free to get in touch, as Ricky just noted.
Indeed.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, might be there.
Perfect. I will I will end today's session then. Thank you again, just for coming, everybody. And the recording we'll send out if anyone requests, if they've missed it, and Bethany, I'll also send it to you as well. Okay, great. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you all.
See you later.
Thank you.